Everybody, we're gonna get going here. I will apologize to everybody on the call right now because I'm gonna raise my voice for the room. Um, and just want to welcome everybody here for our August meetup for downtown Orlando UX. How about this new place? Yeah, this is pretty awesome. Again, I'm going to jump to the next one here. Thank you, Starter Studio, for giving us this hospitality. They have several different rooms that we can use sometimes. So this one is a first time try, and it really looks like an amazing space. So again, thank you, Starter Studio, for yes making this available. Just checking everybody on the call is able to hear us and see us. So thank you. I think we've got a little bit about downtown Orlando UX. Our mission is to create opportunities for anyone to learn and share knowledge in the field about user experience. You can see that up there. But when we were originally founded, we're almost on 10 years. October will be our 10th year. So please keep an eye out for that. And when we were originally founded, it was about bringing UX community together here in Central Florida. And it's just been a tremendous ride. And we appreciate you all being here. I am Wes Brown. You can see me up here. Matt's over here in the corner. We've got Amy over here, Abhishek, and Jason running the camera. So thank you, Jason, for being our AV guy. And we had a few folks show up here and help out. Anyone stand up, raise your hand. But thank you, volunteers, for helping. That really makes a difference. So welcoming folks. If anyone else wants to participate, reach out to us and let us know. And then if you're remote, please turn on your camera. We'd love to see you. We are going to be doing a workshop. John's going to be facilitating some of that. And we'd love to be able to have you all participate too. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Jason's monitoring that. And with that, I want to introduce John Murray. He's Associate Professor of Games and Interaction Media at UCF. We also have people that come to downtown Orlando UX who had cohorts and have been part of his program that he helps co-facilitate. And it is amazing that we're seeing that kind of growth around UX and technology in Central Florida. And UCF does have some great stuff for technology. The computer science group is amazing, and all of the things that we're doing downtown here is really cool too. And this is also a shared facility for UCF, which is pretty cool. So with that said, John, I'd love for you to share a little bit about designing for the future of AI and user experience design. And let's get things rocking and rolling.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, John. Welcome. Take it away.
All right, now I need to switch over my slides. The very dangerous thing to do. And also, I believe I'm still coming through on the mic. Checking 1, 2, 3. Now I'm doing it. I actually muted myself. All right, so let us go over to my slide deck from the beginning. So this, of course, is not good for Zoom. So let me mirror it. Sorry, this is always the most dangerous part. All right, hide floating media controls. All right, thank you very much for that introduction. Is it all looking good? Okay, great. So I will do only a brief extension of my introduction. So I co-wrote 2 books. I kind of go between a variety of fields. I'm actually more comfortable in interactive narratives and electronic literature. One of the 2 books I co-wrote was on adventure games, looking at the history of adventure games. And games and web design have a lot in common. They're all concerned with user experience. They're very concerned with the design elements and guiding a user through a series of activities. But in games, typically the designer creates a series of obstacles, but make sure they're fun obstacles. So in some ways, they have a lot of shared experiences, which is why we host both of them in our program together in the games side and the web tracks. I also co-founded a company, Seabright, in 2012, well before a company should have been founded in the VR space. It ended up only operating until 2018, but I did learn a lot about how do you prototype and understand AR and VR interfaces when there isn't a lot to go on. There isn't like this large amount of works that have been done out there or experiences that you can base your designs on. And last but not least, I am co-PI on an NSF grant that is accelerating user experience research in VR, basically making it so that researchers across the country can have access to a diverse pool of users to run studies with and to compensate those users. Because right now, researchers mostly draw from their undergraduate and graduate student populations, and those are heavily biased towards certain demographics. So a couple of projects. Reality Flow, I'll be talking about a little bit more here before we get to the workshop part. Shields Down is an example of one of those interactive narratives. This one, we recently submitted this to Indiecade. It is, I have no idea how to get this to go full screen, but basically you are in this holotherapy application, a sort of futuristic application where you interact with a series of characters that reflect different relationships in your life, but you're doing it in a fictional guise. So this is a particularly fun project because the interface in it is brand new. Like in general, in VR, you interact with things using direct manipulation. Even choice-based narratives in VR often have you select the choice options. I wanted to put it closer to drama. So instead of interacting through maybe interfaces, you actually use your voice to read lines that are prompted to you as if you're an actor or performer reading them. And it actually analyzes your voice for what emotion it detects in order to decide how the other characters react. So by taking away the decision from the user of what to say, you give them the decision of how to say it, and that could become more interesting from an interactive narrative perspective. I'm also co-chairing a couple of conferences in the academic world, so I'm very familiar with both the literature as well as just UI that I'm unhappy with by using what was there. Okay, so here is the agenda for this evening. We'll be doing a bit of an overview of AI and UX. We'll be doing a short demo of that VR immersive authoring tool and some of the lessons I learned integrating AI into its interface. We'll then be breaking up into groups to do an exercise where you will get the opportunity to redesign a feature of an app that you are familiar with a group using paper and pencil, because if you were using digital tools, it would be very difficult. Now, those of you online using digital tools, Figma is my recommendation. I'd recommend creating an account now or looking into other wireframing tools. We're not necessarily looking for high fidelity here or prototypes. I'll talk more about that when we get there. So first, let me start with a program here. How many people here have heard of P5.js? Raise your hands. I see 1, 2. Okay, excellent. This makes me so happy that I get to introduce something that is near and dear to my heart, and I often use it in my teaching. P5.js is basically a platform built on top of JavaScript. It is an iteration of a previous platform called Processing by Casey Reyes and others. And basically, the entire goal of this platform is how do you make programming accessible to visual artists? Basically, those who don't want to get a computer science degree or who may not be interested in all the introductory classes in logic and math as the main application of computing. So P5.js is designed to bring visual artists very quickly into programming by giving them some primitive things and removing many of the boilerplates. Now, lucky for you, P5.js also is a web-based application where you can run and iterate on it directly in the web browser, which makes it really useful for teaching, especially in these contexts. It even has a mobile website, which you might be using shortly. So this right here is an example of me using ChatGPT to create a P5.js program. I was using it through a prompt. And I hate to do this again, but I really like polls because I want everyone to see the context of the room and what everybody's experience levels are. How many people here have used ChatGPT? Has anyone not used ChatGPT? Raise your hand and don't be embarrassed. Excellent. There's one, maybe two. Okay, how many people here have used ChatGPT to program something? Raise your hands. I see a fewer number of hands, not the full room. Okay, great. So it turns out programming might actually be one of those ideal use cases for large language models, because to some extent, programming is the act of translating some sort of intent, some sort of natural language representation of what you want the computer to do into the more formal domain of a particular language and its formal constraints. So it also has a lot of examples of training data in every single programming language. So it can translate an idea that it received in C# or something else and adapt it to JavaScript, because the way that large language models work, it's all about predicting the next token based on the history of patterns that it has absorbed during the training portion of its model creation. I'm not going to go too far into depth in the model details or what a model is or how it works. We don't have time for that because we're going to be very practical oriented here. So take a look at this prompt that I gave ChatGPT and see the animated version of the P5 sketch that was resulting. Here's create a P5.js program that swirls a spiral of squares towards the center of the canvas. So clearly, ChatGPT did not get it right. There is a spiraling donut, kind of a Stargate of squares that are heading away from the center of the canvas. Turns out LLMs, they don't get to see what they actually write the program to create. So they need us a little bit to help mitigate some of those lacks in the model, but they also don't understand necessarily these directional things, like in terms of up, down, left, right. You'll see the same problem in Midjourney and some of the other AI image generation programs. They have a hard time with relationships, especially spatial relationships. So here's the next iteration in my prompt series. I'm basically giving the AI feedback, much as I might give a junior programmer who's very good at programming, but not very good at the real world. So I said, the squares are in a circle rather than a spiral. Wouldn't a spiral involve each square being slightly further from the center? And shouldn't they be moving towards the center? So AIs are very agreeable. Anything you ask them, they're going to want to please you and say, yes, you're right. So if you're asking an AI to be critical, say grade a paper, maybe you're using the wrong tool for the job. It is not designed for that kind of evaluation and criticism because it wasn't trained with that in the reinforcement with human feedback method that they used. They mostly want it to please the user, even if the user's wrong. And some people exploit this to humor. There's plenty of examples on the internet. So in this case, it actually is closer to what I was looking for. It does have a spiral. It's going in and out, but I gave it enough feedback that it was able to adapt the program in record time, faster than I would be able to change the program, read it. It was basically a very fast way to iterate on an idea, even if the original one was wrong. Here's a few more examples of prompts. Again, prompts being the main way that ChatGPT was introduced to the world and one of the fastest growing apps out there, a web app that simply asks you to type something and it'll give you feedback in the form of text. So I do say the squares then spiral out. How can they appear to infinitely be swirling in? Here, at the very least, it's going out and in again infinitely, and then each square should reset. So here I'm starting to introduce my knowledge and try to say like, okay, I know kind of how this should work as I would program it. I'm going to give you some hints so that you can maybe do the job better given my specialized knowledge. And this is what I tell my students. You don't want to delegate decisions and creative control to AI. You want to retain those as the user who has that expertise and human knowledge of what people want and also the domain itself. So in that case, I'm leveraging my knowledge of programming to improve my discussion with the AI and still achieving something faster than I might have done by hand coding it and iterating it step by step. So each square should reset. This is me imagining like, okay, I really do want this to be just a set of squares in an array, and then the position resets to the center. And it actually took that feedback and gave me a nice infinite spiral of, actually it's more just a single spiral that's rotating, but we get closer. So here it basically does give me that generation and they're all swirling out. So here are the 4 prompts in natural language. Not a single programming term was used in any of them. And yet I wrote a program that generated an animation that I could then work with and get feedback from. So this is a vastly different modality for programming than many of you might experience with an editor getting feedback, maybe some squiggly lines under it in VS Code or whatever saying your syntax is wrong, maybe a compiler error. I do recommend my students copy and paste compiler errors, but in general, sorry if I'm moving too much, I'll move less. So in general, programming with natural language is an evolution of the traditional programming, and it could benefit people that may be put off from the syntax strictness of most ways of teaching program. I was taught to program by basically handwriting programs and then getting marked off on my test at the University of Maryland's computer science undergraduate program if I got the syntax wrong for C. And that means missing a semicolon or missing a clothing parentheses. So I'm not surprised that computer science has put off a lot of creative, energetic, and interesting people from pursuing the discipline. And I do predict that natural language and AI in general could open up the field to many more. So with that, we're going to actually have a surprise mini exercise. everyone's going to take out your phones and you're going to use two websites. An AI tool of your choice, ChatGPT, Claude, Bing, or Gemini, or some other one if you have a secret AI you're working on. Editor.p5js.org has a mobile website, and its mobile website allows you to basically copy and paste code in there and execute it directly in the browser. It's all JavaScript all the way down, just like Turtles. So you would need to tell the AI tool that your choice, create a P5JS, sketch that, and then describe some sort of animation, something with shapes, again, just like I demonstrated with those series of prompts, and see what the results are. And if you see something you don't like, don't read the code, just give the feedback to the chatbot. I'm only going to give you about 5 to 6 minutes to do this, but I want you, once you're done, to share the results with your neighbor and maybe say, like, was there something surprising? How quickly did it converge? Were you able to achieve your original imagined thing? And I suggest doing it with primitive shapes, minimal animation, and something that might be somewhat easy to do if you were programming in about 20 or 30 minutes and you knew P5JS. And I'm going to say the same exercise works fine on Zoom, except you might be using your laptops or desktops there. But do try to iterate at least once. If you have any trouble, let me know. But I'm reasonably sure you'll be able to switch back and forth between the two browser tabs to copy and paste the information and be able to test it also inside the Play one. In fact, I will probably do a quick demo up here so that you can see both. So there's ChatGPT, and there's editor.p5js.org. So in editor.p5js.org, I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to force it into mobile view so that you could see the same thing you're probably seeing. Our prompt is, let me make sure I remind myself, create a P5JS sketch that. So we're providing the context to the LLM. It's using P5JS, so it knows the commands that are valid in P5JS. It knows it's a sketch, so it's not in a larger application. And then you can continue with the rest of your idea or visual design that you'd like it to implement. And again, it probably doesn't have a great understanding of spatial things, but I've had students create Pong games quickly this way, Flappy Bird, Temple Run, things that there's lots of examples of. It's usually quite good at. And I'll actually start over here with an example. Hide floating meeting controls. Create a P5JS sketch that has a square bouncing around the edges. And this is using ChatGPT 4.0. And I will simply wait for it to finish generating and not even read the explanation. I can read that later. In fact, if I see it execute, I don't really need the explanation. So I'm going to paste it in here and hit play. And I get myself a square bouncing around in under a minute. I couldn't program it that fast. I'm pretty good at programming, but I'm not that good. I'll give you about 4 more minutes. Finish up your sketches and then share with your neighbor, or even let your neighbor peek at the sketch if it's particularly interesting or exciting. Are people having keyboard issues? Oh, it's not letting you paste? So in my suggestion, did you get it? Yeah, you just usually have to long tap or something for pasting. I don't think the website would stop you. Another option is you can always use desktop view in your mobile device, and it'll be small, but you don't really need to read the code. It might be a force press on iOS or something.
I asked it to make a turtle.
Very nice, very nice.
Almost a turtle.
Iterate on it. Ask it to do something different or describe why it's wrong. It likes feedback, and actually it only works with human feedback. That's kind of how they trained it. And once you have something interesting, definitely share it with your neighbor, and don't be shy, because you're probably doing something completely different from them. If you want to get even more sophisticated, you can actually take a screenshot of your P5.js chat and send it to the LLM so it knows what it programmed. It might actually do better if it can see, quote unquote, the results of its code. So in this case, the one I created, I'm not happy with the square going below the bottom of the window, so I could provide it that feedback. And I'm actually going to make this bigger so everyone can see this. So I say the square goes below the bottom of the canvas or even the screen. Keep the square in. And that's my feedback. I wait about 20 seconds, maybe not even, for it to incorporate the feedback. And then I will copy. Don't worry about undoing, just copy over it and paste over it. All right, so I go back here and I hit stop. And I'm going to replace this and play and see if it actually, oh, I don't think I successfully. Copy, paste. It's there. There we go. Now, you're not all familiar with P5.js is capable of, but it can do everything from animation, squash and stretch. You could do changing the color of the cube. You could actually make it interactive and add mouse input or touch input for mobile devices. So P5.js is very flexible in that it doesn't have a UI library built into it. You actually can experiment with different designs without being constrained by some widget that someone else has already designed. And actually, I recommend to some of my students that if they want to go outside the box, P5.js is not a bad idea because, again, it doesn't have those built-in constraints of a platform like Unity. All right, has everyone had a chance to create a sketch and share it with their neighbors? Great. Did anyone find something particularly surprising or fun that they might want to share? You need to get it to work first. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Anyone else? You got something? Pull it, come here, step up here, please. All right. First, try to put it in front of that camera there. Just show the screen so everyone online, not that close, a little bit further back. How's it look? Switch it over to camera view. Okay. Right there. All right. So we have infinite Tetris already created in 5 minutes right here, right now. How is that for collaborative programming? It's not very good at it. You might want to tell it to just be better at Tetris. Maybe it'll take that feedback. All right, thank you very much. Awesome. Yeah, if you fix it later, great. I'm going to move on from our surprise lightning exercise. The one later is longer. So let's talk for a moment about what AI is good at. So I just mentioned translation. And programming is kind of a subset of translation, taking something that it already has all the information for, and then folding in all of the background knowledge that the model trained into it. So to some extent, summarization, question answering are all kind of subsections of translation. Given this longer piece of text, provide me some smaller piece of text that answers a question based on it. And this is what a lot of the search engines are currently doing. They are basically taking the documents from the web, running an LLM, putting it into the context, and then trying to extract the information you were originally asking for from them, preventing you from having to navigate to those websites. Clearly, that's problematic for people who desire people to navigate to their website, watch their ads, and otherwise monetize their websites. So this is an example of maybe AI doing something it's good at, but that may be bad in general for the entire ecosystem. There are other examples of that I'm not going to go too much into. It's also pretty good at summarizing, although, again, it doesn't have that expertise that someone might bring to the selection of the summary. So it certainly can summarize a long piece of text into a shorter piece of text. But again, this is something you would absolutely want to have someone review and authorize rather than send it in. In academia, we've had a huge problem with AI, both in reviewing process as well as a paper writing process. So when you start delegating decisions on your paper to an AI, some of these papers have even left the markers of AI in the paper itself. And it's really toxic to the entire trust we have in scholarship and research in general. This most recent conference that I am co-chairing, we actually had some pretty obvious AI reviews that came in that we had to tell the reviewer to correct it or replace it because AI offers this kind of instant ability to translate something short into something long and potentially fill it in a bit. Students, of course, have found this to be effective as well in terms of writing papers or cheating on homework assignments. In general, I allow my students to use AI in classes, but I tell them they have to cite their sources and show me the transcript when they do use it so that I can see how they're using it and whether they're using it effectively. And there are certainly some assignments where I forbid the use of AI, especially things like peer review or coming up with creative ideas. Now, you might say, oh, but I read that AI is awesome at coming up with fun recipe ideas because of various AI ads. Well, let's just say creativity is something everyone in this room is probably familiar with, and that you certainly can use AI as a partner in the generation of ideas, part of the process. Just as you could use, say, a dartboard in a set of ideas and potentially get something out of it if you landed on an idea that you didn't think was particularly interesting, and then you were forced to focus on it because it was presented to you. There's another exercise I did in a poetry class where you have multiple people reading different poems, and you hear the words conjoined with each other in different combinations. And this kind of creativity is something that AI is capable of. It's capable of taking diverse sets of sources and potentially combining them in ways that may never have been seen before. And this type of creativity is useful only to the extent that a human can, at this point, evaluate it and understand the benefits. But if you don't understand the result of it, or you can't assess it, it's kind of like asking a program to write asking AI to write a program and not being able to see the results of it and sending it to your customer and saying, well, you know, pretty sure it'll work. Let's cross our fingers. How about this? Does anyone else have something they found AI to be particularly good at that they were surprised by? Or maybe something that AI was terrible at that they were also maybe disappointed in because they were hoping AI could do this thing they didn't want to do anymore? Yes, and I'll repeat what you say, so.
Just in the little exercise we did, I personally have been using Gemini for pretty, what?
I said, I have a second mic you could potentially pass around. That might actually be simpler. Just make sure it's unmuted. Here, speak into it for a second.
Hello.
Okay, perfect.
Hello.
Here, I want to make sure everyone on Zoom gets your discussion. Just pass it over. All right, thank you.
Yes, even just in the little exercise we were doing, I was using not ChatGPT, even though I went there, Google Gemini, which I thought I like Gemini more so than ChatGPT because ChatGPT has a cutoff point where Gemini doesn't. But I've noticed that recently, especially after the first update, AI has begun to eat itself, providing false information. And my code from Gemini, it provided the code of create. It took my whole prompt and then turned my whole prompt into a code, not what I was asking it for it to do. So it made a code that read create this within the brackets, which utterly useless. ChatGPT, on the other hand, was able to allow me to create a Shadow the Hedgehog themed triangle. So I think there is an issue with different sort of models and what they're able to do, how they learn, and I do think that is a concern of AI eating itself.
Yeah, what you're describing is the text apocalypse, Matthew Kirschenbaum also discussed this, where we were reaching a point where most of the training data sets that AI were trained on have closed off their data sets to AI. So now AI is looking at all the stuff that was created by AI for potential new training data sets, especially since the AI companies don't necessarily want to fork over the cash to license the content. It would bankrupt many of them since they're pouring their cash into compute and really high-paid employees. So yes, it is a valid concern and something I know some of the better models should be able to apply AI detection to find bad AI text to begin with. But in general, I see the way forward mostly for AI companies to get better at using the data sets that they already have that are openly available and that may have already been like not stolen, and to do more with less. So that is my hope for the ones, and I know many of them understand that this problem is going to happen, and I don't predict this problem simply to collapse the entire AI area. There's a lot of smart people that are working on this problem and are aware of bad data poisoning a data set. But at the same time, there's a host of other issues that you're also raising about what is the fitness for a model for a particular task, and how do you compare different models for the same type of prompt. So thank you. Anyone else? I see one online.
It said that she finds it good with back and forth iteration and condensing information.
Back and forth iteration and condensing information. Yeah. So in general, I use AI to refine some of my assignments. I use AI to also potentially play around with things in the same way that I do with programs. So I don't rely on AI for content generation. I rely on AI for content manipulation. And in some cases, I would never trust AI to write something that I want someone else to read because it's so bad at it. I mean, it's fluent English, but it's bad fluent English. Nobody would want to read something generated by AI because it's so boring and formulaic, and in fact, something that you would be dissuaded from any creative writing class. So if you're relying on AI to generate text for, say, dialogue in a drama or text you want to publish to the web, just don't. Okay, we'll cover a few more
Hey,
capabilities.
John,
yeah,
I've got one too.
oh yeah, please go ahead.
No one said images.
Images.
Right?
Okay,
But-
yeah,
but
we're
yeah.
focusing more on the text side,
Okay.
but let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
images as well.
Well-
So what are they good at about images?
So today I was on a call and they said, well, let's have a standing window for this when we do it. And I couldn't find an image that was a standing window. So a window with legs is what I wanted. And so it took me a couple of different prompts, but I finally got a window with legs, which was great.
So I would say AI image generation, of course, being really fraught from a ethical standpoint in terms of a lot of people's artworks are often ingested, especially with DeviantArt, not DeviantArt being one example, but specifically Midjourney being very closed off with what data set it's using for training its image generation. ChatGPT and DALL-E 2 are also examples of this. There are some like Stable Diffusion where they use an open data set, but they didn't get permission or license all of the images that went into that either. So these are all being worked out in the courts right now. From what I tell my students, if you're using AI, you should disclose the use of AI, and you should expect people to devalue what you do if AI is a major part of the value of what you're delivering. Right now, there's been a number of campaigns for people actually boycotting things because AI was used in it. There's an example, for instance, in the Marvel series Secret Invasion, that had an AI credit sequence that was immediately looked at and said, oh, you created credits with AI, so you paid fewer people to do something, and therefore you're leading to the destruction of the industry that I may want to be in, right? And this is also something I've observed in smaller uses of AI. So there was also a movie, Late Night with the Devil, that used a few stand-in cards that were skewered on social media for its use of AI, even though they were fairly small compared to the plot and otherwise good movie. And these were the case where people were like, we need to raise some sort of alarm, because otherwise people will be accustomed to AI being a regular part of a production process. So if there isn't pushback earlier on certain types of use that replace human labor, then people will basically say, yeah, we're a frog in a pot getting hotter, and we're not going to notice it because it's just going to slowly creep into various places. Now, places I think AI image generation are great for is especially generating a set of ideas quickly, understanding maybe visualization, potentially getting a large set of options so that you could select between them and then potentially refine and use them. So I know there's also some valid uses of AI in final products. Just know that there's some bias against it in the same way that there's bias against writing. but that's a good point. It's also pretty good. It's not very good at video yet. Let's not talk about AI and video. Most of the stuff you see online right now are the hand-picked examples that actually work. Most of it is stuff of nightmares. Maybe they would have more luck in horror movies. So what are a few trends in AI modalities? So we've already seen agents. So you can think of an agent as the AI has some kind of personality or I that you are interacting with. So I can talk to an agent. An agent could be a chat agent for a customer service agent. They're actually very common now for documentation. Oh, you want help? Let me, the pseudo Clippy, help you find what you need in our website. They're also there to help you if you need support on LinkedIn. Oh, here, I can point you to this help article, or I could do several things that typical customer service agents would do before we reduce the number of customer service agents. Oh, you want an agent? Here, let me just escalate you to someone who may or may not be an AI. So in some ways, agents are something we understand because we can understand an entity that can talk back and forth with us in a conversation. This goes back to the Turing test, some of our original ideas around, is AI smart or is AI intelligent? Another great example is ELIZA. Sorry, I don't have a slide for this, but ELIZA was an early computer program where the entire goal was to fool the audience who could type in natural language, that the thing on the other side had some level of intelligence in the form of a Rogerian psychotherapist that would interact with you. So because of the constrained genre, the keyword searches and the responses were often realistic enough to give people that illusion of intelligence and agency, even though the thing was very simplistic on the other side. So these are just a couple of examples of chat-style agents pre-LLMs. Mixed initiative is an area where we're still not seeing a lot. Mostly we're seeing suggestions in the case of Grammarly, in the case of Copilot, places where the AI starts to take initiative beyond the prompt, right? You don't have to give it an action on the user's part in order to get feedback or information from the AI. Another one we're seeing grow more and more is something called shared context. So in a typical conversation, it could only know the history of the conversation. So you might need to provide it documents, but if you want to have a different thread of the conversation, you have to provide all that context again. So Claude by Anthropic has a project feature that allows you to give it a set of documents that it will reference in the context window as it's working on things. And Google also has this LLM notebook that does virtually the same thing. And finally, generating interfaces. So this is something that is really only possible with a recent introduction by ChatGPT of something called schema-guaranteed JSON. So you can ask ChatGPT to create JSON for you and use it potentially in a program. But before they had this API, you couldn't guarantee that the JSON would adhere to a particular schema. So now you could give it a set of functions to call, or maybe even a set of things that it can access through a JSON, and it will conform to your schema, and it won't break your code or give stuff that's outside of that schema. And this is an extension of their earlier function calling extensions, which allow you to do things like search the web or call program calls or reach out into your IoT device so you can talk to your lights or speakers or things. Those are all examples of an LLM using a tool and reaching out into a different API on your behalf because it was trained to do so by their human feedback. Now, the last two bullets I'm not going to go too much into, but everyone here is aware of the fact that ChatGPT promises a real-time interaction with an AI, just like a human being. Back and forth, banter, maybe some personality. Has everyone seen that ad and heard about that? Because ChatGPT did a pretty big ad about it. They promise it coming in the fall, and if it does arise, I'm a little concerned at like what the use cases are. Like how much work is accomplished when you're just having a sort of social back and forth without additional context or maybe a side document or other things. The voice itself probably might not accomplish much other than making you feel less lonely when you're talking to an LLM. And the last one here actually touches on the images thing. So more recently, AI is getting better at integrating image models along with text rather than calling out to a separate model to say, show you an illustration of your D&D session you're having with AI Dungeon, for instance. So in that case, we might have a better understanding of spatial relationships and feedback on things like UI interfaces you might provide it. So you could give it a screenshot of an interface, say, I'd like to make these changes. Can you create a wireframe showing it? And that might actually be a productive back and forth because it goes between text and image and it keeps the same context. So I have here a few examples. I'm only going to go very quickly
Morning,
through
everyone.
one of them.
Today
So
we're
this is an
diving
example of an embodied VR agent that is backed by an LLM that's designed to be like a AI tutor.
a light
It's supposed
object.
to be for an educational use case, and it's
Yes.
being trialed at a number of universities right now. But this kind of presupposes that users want to interact with a Clippy style embodied agent as the way to interact on, say, a textbook course content or something like that, which I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And I don't think there's enough research to really say someone learns better when there's a projection of a human being on an AI that's giving them that feedback and back and forth. It might be that something more
What OSHA
abstract or
regulation should
something
I be
more
reading to
like, I
understand
know it's a
forklift
computer and I don't have
safety?
to pretend it's a person,
Great
could
question.
actually be more
You
effective
should
in
start
some.
by reviewing.
I don't know. So again, mixed initiative, Figma AI, GitHub Copilot. You're actually having the AI interact with the interface with the same tools that you have instead of going through a chat interface and copying and pasting it back. Shared context, Claude projects, LLM, and of course, generating UI elements. We've seen a little bit of this in Bing, where they say, okay, it's too much work to have the users reply to you by typing something. Why don't we use LLMs to generate some pre-done replies based on the conversation? Let's just make it easier. So this is a low-level example, but you could imagine an AI actually pulling out any interface they want to get feedback from a user, like rate myself 1 to 5 stars, and then they could feed that back in with a textual representation of it. So that's another example of AI actually using interfaces to accomplish its goals and potentially doing more than a text-based interface could. So I'm going to go very quickly through this example because we're a little bit later than I hoped. But first, do I have in the audience my students? Let's see. If my students could unmute, do we have, is it actually going out to the speaker right now?
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm here.
I have that. Let me make sure I have the right speaker selected. Here it is.
I'm a former student.
Crestron. There we go. Okay, that's also fine. Can someone, or one of my students on the call and can unmute Jordan maybe?
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm here.
And say something, Jordan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, I can't hear you, so I'm gonna go straight to my computer audio. Give me a second. All right, try again.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, I was muted, so maybe that was it. All right, say something again.
Hello, hello.
All right, great. So would you be so kind? Do you have something to share your screen with?
Yes, I do.
All right, go right ahead. I think everyone has sharing abilities. So before Jordan goes, I'm actually going to skip to the point. This is a VR immersive authoring program I am working on with a series of UCF senior design teams. The goal is to reduce the barriers to entry for creating VR experiences and to make it so that people can potentially author things with AI assistance instead of writing programs from scratch. This is based on a fairly straightforward MERN architecture with MongoDB backing it, Express, GraphQL, and a few other things. And we're using the Ubic networking library for multi-user interactions. In it, you can basically create a scene with other users, manipulating 3D primitives along with meshes that you brought in. It's fairly similar to Microsoft Maquette or Shapes 3D or a few other ones, but we also included the ability to author behaviors and to be able to have multi-user authoring take place. So this is one that has iterated over a number of times. So I have a few of the previous teams here along with the most recent team that graduated this summer. Jordan was one of the most recent teams, and he will, I don't know if I was actually sharing all that on Zoom, so I will share that afterwards. So Jordan, can you take it away from there and describe again shortly what your particular task was in the project and how it relates to AI?
Okay, hello, my name is Jordan Miller. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
I believe, okay. So I was responsible for integrating AI into this Reality Flow program. Have you already introduced Reality Flow or should
Yes.
I?
You're good.
Okay, okay, cool. So what it essentially does is it allows users to create things without any previous programming experience. So all you have to do is simply, well, in VR, it's all simulated through VR. If you were to record a message such as create a cube through
You may have started
Whisper,
that a
which
bit
is
soon.
oh, so it uses OpenAI's model called Whisper, which is a speech to text, which will then transcribe what you say. It should be transcribing what I'm saying right now, I believe. Yeah, okay. So if you in Reality Flow, if you were to go and say spawn a cube, like so, what it does is it takes the text that the user has generated through their voice and then sends it to OpenAI, the model ChatGPT 4.0, where it then returns a structured output, which is what Dr. Murray was talking about earlier, which is how OpenAI is allowing people to get structured JSON back that is very it's very specialized to how you want it. In this case, we're asking for it to give the object name, the function, and certain parameters that will then be called to create the cube. So in this instance, users will then be able to run this code. It's kind of hard to tell what happened since there's so many cubes around me. But if I were to go and put this over here and say spawn a key, you'll see the user like pathway and how the application works. So it would appear when it's ready, it appears inside this action list, like so, create an object. And then when the user executes in VR, it's a button on the left hand, executes, and the cube is spawned, or the key is spawned in this case, which is then interactable all in VR, of course. So
Can you say a little bit more about the decisions around the interface itself? Why is there a pause before it executes?
okay, the pause before it executes. If you're talking about the pause where you have to like visually confirm like I guess like confirm that's what you want to create. Like if it's inside the action list here, you have to actually press a button to execute it because what actually happens is you can say any number of prompts and it'll get added to a queue. And then when the user presses the button, they'll all be executed at the same time. So if you have different functionalities such as spawn a cube and then manipulate that cube and then delete that cube, it'll do all those things. That might not work the best because the actions are instantaneous. So it may delete the cube before it moves it, but it's very cool how it works, and it provides the user a lot of versatility, things that they don't
And
have to do
control for
themselves.
that matter,
And
because
control.
you could imagine a naive version of this application that would directly execute code against the Unity API and potentially delete your entire scene or cause bugs. By putting this constrained API and also getting the user involved in, hey, it's about to do these things. Are you sure you want to do these things? It slows things down a little bit, but it also increases level of control. Another critical thing that Jordan worked on that he hasn't mentioned yet is an undo feature. If you're working with AI, being able to go back to the previous state is quite important given how it could potentially delete everything or do things that are very undesirable. So thank you, Jordan, for that. I appreciate it. A small round of applause for Jordan.
Thank you.
And we've got a question here. Yes, please.
Is that key basically JSON?
So the key is a model that we provided to it. We have a separate platform where you can basically upload models to the web platform and then download them. It's not being generated in AI, however.
Okay.
So the key is definitely not coming out from nowhere. It's a preset of prefabs that you can select from that it will create. It would be cool if it could generate one from nothing. That would be amazing. The team actually created an escape room where the key was one of the goals. And in addition to creating 3D objects, it also can add behaviors by voice, such as making it so that when the key touches something, it would disappear, which I found particularly impressive. Leslie, are you here by any chance?
And the question was, is the key a JSON? Just
Yeah,
for
is the
folks.
key a JSON? Hey, Leslie, do you want to say a few
Yes.
words about your visual scripting component, again, as short as you can?
Essentially, the visual scripting is just a way to do something like programming an object to have different actions associated with it based on events in a simple way that should be accessible to someone who doesn't really know how to program.
So you can imagine Scratch is a type of visual scripting, but there's also blueprints, Unity visual scripting, and basically nodes that are connected to each other to describe a program instead of the syntax strict C# that you would use for Unity otherwise. So there's an example up here of several nodes that are being connected together. It's also friendly for VR because you can connect elements together with simple gestures. And one of the things I had the team work on was how to create visual scripts from basically JSON that was created from the AI so that you didn't even have to do that direct manipulation to create simple behaviors. So thank you both so much for being here. Another round of applause for the team. We don't have a lot of time,
sharing?
unfortunately, so I'm going to switch back over, if you don't mind, stop sharing, because we've got to get to the main event, which is the exercise everyone's going to be working on. But again, let me share my screen here first, because I sometimes forget to do that. Okay, so again, this is only possible from a series of CS UCF teams that have worked on this project since 2018. And it was partly inspired from the challenges I had at Seabright of, man, it's really hard to create content in VR and AR. I wish it wasn't just Unity and taking a headset on and off. So now there's a few other tools like Horizon Worlds, but I still think an open source and freely available tool like this could provide a lot of innovation in the industry where a closed source tool may not. So here is the exercise that you'll be spending the remainder of the time doing. I'd like everyone to break into groups of basically 2 to 3. I'd be okay with groups of 4, but maybe not more than 4. The idea is that you're going to be taking an interface that you already are familiar with. So don't try to research interfaces. Pick one either you're developing right now or that you use on a daily basis. Pick a particular feature from that interface and basically revise or update it with an AI element of the type that we just discussed. So add in either mixed initiative, potentially an agent, maybe even some sort of shared context so that it can potentially do more on your behalf without you having to explicitly direct manipulate the interface to the objective. Or you could potentially add in interface elements that are created on the fly and not necessarily by the UX designer ahead of time. So the goal is to pick one of these, not all of them, that you're going to revise a single feature from in wireframe form. And you're going to be using these whiteboards along with some paper and pencil supplies. Again, if you're online, I recommend Figma. We're only going to spend about 20 minutes doing this, so it's going to be a real lightning round because I'd like 1 or 2 groups to share their results with everybody else at the end of it. And this is one of those advantages. I actually have a Dropbox link. Let me do it here. So once you complete your amazing design iteration, I'd like you to document it through a photo at the end and to submit that photo to this URL in the Dropbox. And that way everyone can see everyone else's designs and maybe some of the annotations as well, even if we don't have time to go through all of them today, because I know we won't. So once you've chosen your AI modality, then you're going to spend a few minutes to sketch and annotate it. So pick maybe 2 to 3 screens or a sequence of interface changes. Don't try to spend a lot of time creating like 5 things or like more than that. And then make sure that you annotate it with callouts and basically describe what is happening, what was appearing. You don't necessarily need to provide the original app that you're modifying. Hopefully it's something that's familiar to everyone that's looking at it, but you may want to highlight the AI elements in some way. And at the last part, we're going to ask you to at least discuss within the groups or in the annotations, what were the limitations communicated to the user? Because if a user thinks an AI can do something it can't, then the interface may have failed in its primary objective of being useful to the user. So also, how are you putting in guardrails or fail-safes? Are you preventing deletion of data? Are you restricting things? These may not be interface elements, but they're definitely part of the use of AI at the current state of AI in the industry. And finally, like if there's any strengths that you're leveraging, such as like you're not asking AI to do mathematics or complex reasoning or evaluation, maybe highlight that what you're actually saying AI is good at from my experience and how am I leveraging that? So that's it from me. I'll leave this slide up here for instructions. So if you want to log into the Zoom and review it or come back here, feel free. Go and form groups, and we have some whiteboard markers up here. We have this whiteboard here, which I would suggest we have 2 teams on either side. I also have some paper, which unfortunately we're not on the original desk that we're looking to be in. So maybe we can have slightly larger groups as a result. So maybe up to 5 or 6 people per group. And yeah, let's try raising this and using this whiteboard as well. let's just make full advantage. I know how to operate one of these things. It's just like my instructor station. Screen up. And
This whiteboard in the hall, just so it's not crowding that way.
all right, and then there is another whiteboard outside as well. And yep, feel free to form groups up to 5, I think, just so that we can get some good discussion in here and some teamwork as well, rather than smaller groups. And there's some paper available if you want to use it, along with some other physical media. And there's some rulers here if you want to use them with.
Perfect. All right, everybody. I think, are you recording still? Okay, you'll do that after. Let's go ahead and we'll do a closing real quick. And then everyone, please thank John. John, thank you. That was amazing. I'm gonna page back here to designing for the future of AI and the AI user experience. That was awesome. I know it's a talk that you've shared different ways, and you really were flexible with our space here too. And thank you for that. And yeah, thank you all for participating too. It's really fun to allow us to be able to be interactive with each other. And we really couldn't do this without you all being here. So thank you all too. And also we have some community announcements. Does anyone here have any announcements before we go into the slides that we've got?
I don't know if this counts as an announcement, but I just got my diploma in digital interactive media production.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Awesome. And yeah, so anything that's going on, if anyone's hiring, please let us know. We can also share them on the meetup and on Slack. But we do have our downtown Orlando UX. Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. We've had the meetup going for about 10 years now. We had an old website that was kind of just stale for a long time, but we actually started a new uxmeetup.com site. And one of the main reasons why we put that out there is to get some mentor connections out there. So there's, I think, only 4 people so far, but if anybody's interested in being listed as a mentor on the site, you can actually sign up yourself on the uxmeetup.com site. And we also just have some information about the meetup and links to our past recordings of meetups and things like that as well. So check it out.
All right. Thank you for that, Jason. Also, we've got ODev's social at Stardust coming up. That is on August 29th. Check out we're blocking your QR code here. Just drag it. Yep. Yep, that'll work. All right, so check out the QR code there. I'm not going to read that out loud because we're pressed for time, but take a quick picture of it. We've got a few different events here. Oh, I'm in the Zoom. Yep. And then of course, now I'm covering that. Okay, so Tampa Bay UX has a virtual portfolio share that I think is Friday, August 30th. So if anyone's looking for feedback on seeing what other people are doing with their portfolios, that is a cool opportunity to be able to do that. And they have another event coming up here, virtual coffee talk. So it's a cool way to get to meet different people, but it's not, you're meeting with people that are in Tampa Bay as well. So that's kind of a neat way to branch out a little bit outside of the Orlando area. And then UX Fundamentals, Object-Oriented UX. That is Wednesday, September 11th. And this looks like it'll be a really cool talk, untangling the complexity of your design process, which can really be beneficial to understand how other people do that. And then let me see. Yep, I've got to move this thing. Sorry, guys. Yep. All right. Sure. Teams user. Okay. Let me see how great leaders navigate decisions. That can be really cool. All of us are leaders. We have opportunities to lead in our companies around UX, but also as you grow your career, you are likely to be put in the position of helping grow your team. And I think that's it. These are links that I have on LinkedIn. So if you're interested, you can go to my LinkedIn or just take a shot of this. And if you're breaking into UX, there are a few different types of information there that can help you all navigate that process. And I believe that's it. And then we're gonna head down the corner to Corner Pizza for a happy hour. Unfortunately, the folks here virtually won't be able to attend that, but we really do appreciate you all being here. If you stuck around, we're gonna try to do a quick selfie and a quick group picture of the group. So everyone maybe just come down here and we'll do that. Yeah, yeah. Let's see here. Well, I was thinking of the group, if they're still here, if our Zoom people are still here.
You can also put up the screen.
Sorry, I'm not a Zoom user, so
Yeah, it works.
I'm looking for the folks, our people on the call.
Oh, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Give me a second. You just have to reveal the person.
That's what we're looking for. Yeah.
If those online want to turn on your cameras briefly, we can put you there, but if you don't, no worries.
Yep, yep. All right, you're all on the screen.
So all across the front of the screen here, just like gather in maybe a couple rows, maybe some more people.
Trying to hide that. There we go. I'm gonna sneak around you guys.
Like I can't be the only one anymore.
All right. Got everybody in there. Folks on the call, we're about to do this. We're gonna take 2 pictures though. We gotta do one with everyone here, and then I'm gonna do the West selfie. All right. Jason, where are you going? Where are you going? Oh, okay. All right. Jason's got his glasses. Get back down there. You're gonna go down. Come on, get in there. Hurry up. Come on, man. We're gonna take 2 more. Sorry about this, guys. All right, and then 1 more. All right, cool. Thank you. And John, thank you again so much. Really appreciate it. And everybody, thanks for sticking around a little bit longer. If you're planning to go to Corner Pizza, we'll see you there, or ask and we can help let you know where it is. Thank
Thanks
you, everybody.
for coming tonight. I appreciate you all being here and for participating too. It was a lot of fun. Have a great night, everybody.